Hey everybody, this is Ben Botkin. Thank you so much for joining me today for this video. What I want to do this time is to walk through Orchestral Tools Metropolis Ark 1 library. And I also want to play a demo track that I wrote for this library when it came out a few years ago called Into the Nebula. Now, I know there have been a lot of other videos and reviews that have already been put out about this library since this is a few years after release. But I never really had a chance to share a screencast of this demo or share some thoughts about the library. So I figured, hey, better late than never. And I hope that some of these thoughts you'll find helpful if you are a Metropolis Ark 1 user or if you are interested in picking up this library. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just play through this demo from beginning to end. And we'll watch the MIDI as it plays. And then I want to just kind of go through the library, go through this piece section by section and talk about some of the strengths of this library that I really like. So just a note as we look at this MIDI, just to let you know, green are strings, blue are woodwinds, red and a darker orange are brass, and this pink here is choir. And then yellow is percussion. So let's go ahead and listen to this piece. This is Into the Nebula. All righty, let's go ahead and take a look at that. So one of the things that you may notice, so I created this demo with only Metropolis Ark 1 instruments. And so there's nothing else sonically playing or going on here. And so one of the things that means is that this piece has a very, sonically, everything just blends naturally and well because it's only all Metropolis 1 instruments. So it's got this really nice sound. Nothing's really sticking out in an unusual or an awkward way. It blends nicely together. Now this library is pretty big. It's kind of as you probably know if you've read some of the resources and materials about the library, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the basic library information or highly detailed articulation information, because you can find that on the Orchestral Tools website, and you can find that on other reviews in other places. I want to focus in a little more, going section by section and talking a little bit about what I'm doing in this piece, some of my favorite patches, and what I think this library is really good for. So obviously it's epic. Okay, the sound is epic. It's got a pretty wet sound, very roomy. These are very large ensembles. I think what I'm going to do first is, so here, anyway, here's the project. I have things foldered out into sections. All the strings here are here. We've got high strings, the high strings, and then the low strings. Woodwinds, we have bassoons and contrabassoons, and the brass, we have trumpets, the 3 French horn ensemble, as well as the 9 French horn ensemble, because I thought, hey, let's go big or go home. That's cheesy. We've got trombones, which are, I believe, actually bass trombones, chimbassi, tubas. We've got our men and women's choir, and the choirs in the Metropolis Ark libraries are really, really a high point in both of the Ark libraries that I have. I have Ark 1 and Ark 2, and the choirs are some of my favorite parts of those libraries. We've got a little bit of percussion going on. I'm using the drum set, the Epic Percussion Ensemble, which is taikos, and I guess mostly taikos, and the Drake piano, grand piano, and then we've even got a little bit of electric guitar, power chords and stuff, and electric bass. So this is what we've got going on, and I'll go ahead and start just by focusing in on the strings. Now, one of the main things to note about this library, but specifically the strings, is that this is kind of an ensemble, it's kind of a specialized sort of library. And the strings in particular are based in offering ensembles, not in offering the specific sections. So if you look at this MIDI, you may notice some things in the voicing that are a little bit uncommon. And the reason for that is we have some octave patches here. So right here, we've got our really, oh man, I love this patch. The legato, those are high strings. The low strings legato octaves patch. That's sounding in octaves, so that's actually going to be here and then here, I believe. And then the strings, I also have the high strings sustained octaves patch. So this is actually in octaves. So the voicing that you see in the MIDI is not actually what you're hearing in all cases. Especially when it comes to the strings, you're actually hearing a more notes than you actually will see in the MIDI. So that explains some of the gaps in the voicing that it looks like are there in the MIDI. The sustains are nice. My favorite part about the, well, let me just play a couple excerpts and then talk about some of the things I really like about the strings. So this is strings only. So basically we've got longs. The long and short of it is we've got longs and shorts. And also they are, as you can see, we've got, these are spiccato unison. These have a really nice full sound. I sometimes like to, these spiccato unisons, I sometimes like to blend with some other libraries that maybe have a sharper, brighter string sound, but this just kind of adds more width and more depth. So sometimes I'll double these with another string library, but at about half volume. So these are just kind of in the background, adding a little more width and a little more size to like a string ostinato patch or something. Now regarding how these patches are put together, you've got your high strings patches, and you've got your low strings. I can't remember, they had special names for those ensembles. I can't remember what those are called. But the high strings are voiced with the C, below middle C, being the lowest note. So that's viola range. So the high strings are going to be violas and violins. Then you also you have, here's like the same thing, the same group, but playing unison. The sound of the sustains is pretty intense. I don't actually use these sustains a lot in other music. I'll end up using some of my other primary string libraries for like sort of more regular sustain stuff most of the time. But what I end up using the most from this library just most commonly on the string side is actually the low strings spiccato octaves patch and the low strings octaves patches. These have a really nice, really big, powerful sound. So let me play you the spiccato octaves. You're probably not going to want to play chords with that because it's probably double basses and then cello an octave above. So that's going to be probably just a little too full of a sound to really get clarity when you're playing chords and stuff. And then regarding the voicing, when you're writing with these strings, because it's not broken out into sections like first violins, second violins, violas, cello, bass, it limits the sort of things you can do with your string writing, and especially in the viola range. So like the way I voice these opening chords here, it's just, I'm using the higher strings, and then I'm using the lower strings, just a single note. Obviously that's going to be doubled, and that's the entirety of the voicing. I mean, that's just how it's breaking up. And if I was doing this with a sectional string library like Cinematic Studio Strings or Berlin Strings or any other primary string library, I would actually split this up like double basses, cello, violas, and violins, and that would give me more room to work with in the inner voicing. So this is not a so this string library is strong at a couple things, but it's not really intended to be a go-to and all things string library. So those spiccato shorts are really nice. These legato octave patches are really, really nice for just laying down a really strong, heavy bass. Let's go somewhere where it's a little louder. And the legatos are pretty decent in this patch, but the attacks are really juicy. So listen to these attacks. So sometimes I'll if I'm doing something really big and full orchestra with other libraries, sometimes I'll use just this patch, just in the bass, just because it's so strong and it's so meaty and gravelly. Sometimes I'll use this patch with my other libraries just to get that really strong low end. Now, this spiccato octaves patch, one of the things I love about this patch is it's kind of the same thing. And I'll use it in a similar way with my other libraries, just to reinforce the low end. But a cool thing about this library, the low end is just really powerful. You can do some really cool stuff like get those bass trombone staccatos, merge it with these guys, and all of a sudden we've got I mean, talk about bite and just really nice, chompy awesomeness. It's such a great sound. I mean, I want to write like some adventurous parody music with like melody in the bass because these instruments are so powerful in the bass. So these are a couple of my favorite string patches. The legato, the low strings and octaves legato, and the low strings and octaves spiccato. So I'll move on. Woodwinds. Let's see what this library comes with. Woodwinds wise. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Pull it up here so you can see where I'm looking, what I'm looking at. Orchestra. And that's right. Yes, it's just bassoons and contrabassoons. That's what I thought I remembered. So in this piece, we've got a bassoon staccato and contrabassoon staccato. And they're just kind of adding some color to our mid to low end in this piece. So in kind of our B section, kind of our Carmina Burana-esque section, not gonna lie, it's a little similar. I'm using those guys. With the violins, violas. You can hear the contrabassoons coming in. So this is a nice sound. Let's go ahead and merge it with our bassoons. These are sustains. It's nice sound. It's in a lot of orchestral writing, bassoons will be used, and contrabassoons will be used to double some of the lower end instruments, just to change the color a little bit. So bassoons, woodwinds are not super well represented in this library, but these are some nice, just kind of bread and butter bassoon samples. Actually, well, no, they're not exactly bread and butter because they're several bassoons. It's bassoon ensembles actually. Moving on, brass. Brass is definitely a strength of this library, and it is more sectional than the strings. So you have trumpets with all the standard articulations. You've got staccatos, marcato shorts, so a little bit longer, short articulation, marcato longs, a little bit longer, trumpet sustain patches. And then there's also, are there legatos? I can't remember. I should probably check and see if there are. I actually don't remember because usually I'm using Berlin brass or Cinebrass or something else for my brass. Okay. Yeah, no, there's no, I don't see any legato trumpets here. I didn't think there were. So it's not quite a full set of basic articulations because most brass libraries also have a legato patch as well. But then we have a 3 horns ensemble, which is more of a traditional horn section size. Also in your staccatos, there's shorts, a little bit longer short, a little bit longer short, and then a sustain. And then we've also got this massive 9 horns patch, which I think is too big for most stuff. And so for most like more standard brass writing, I'm going to be using my 3 horns patch, rather than the 9 horns patch. But in this piece, I just threw all caution to the wind, and I'm like, I'm just going to try to use everything in the library. Now it has this 9 horns legato patch. This is legato, and this is kind of more like for carrying your really epic horn melody. Oh, there's a little artifact in there. So that's what those are for. We've got some rips. Those are just tasty. Trombones, same thing. Staccatos, shorts and longs, a basic set. These just got a really nice sound. Chimbasso. Just really crisp, really bright sound. Tubas, you know, good old tubas. A little bit of How to Train Your Dragon. And so one thing you will note about this demo is I'm not using the multi-patches. I'm separating the articulations out one per track. And the reason for that is when I wrote this demo, I was using the beta of the library, which was provided to me by Orchestral Tools. So there were no multi-patches yet. So every articulation got its own track. Now I kept it that way for this video because I think it actually, in some ways, makes it easier for you to see what's going on as I switch between articulations. Because if you want to make an active, powerful brass melody, there's going to be a lot of switching back and forths between different lengths of short and long articulations. So you really want to be switching between your staccatos, your marcato longs, your marcato shorts, and your sustains when you need to really get the most out of your instruments. Because that's how a real instrument would do it. It wouldn't just be one length of note. There'd be many lengths. So let's play a brass only for a little bit of this piece and just kind of see what this sounds like. We've got a big, right here at our climax, we've got some really strong brass action. So let's just go ahead and listen to that. Let's just open that up in the MIDI just so you can see how that is voiced. Remove this lane because we don't need to see that lane. So long, lane. Okay. So switching between short and longer articulations, as you can see here in the trumpets, right? 4 different articulations going back and forth. So you'll want to use your articulations like that, whether you break your articulations out by track or whether you're using a multi-patch. You know, if you're using the multi-patch, use those key switches. Make use of all those different articulations at your disposal. Really nice low chords, really aggressive stuff. The trumpet sound, it works in a certain register really nicely. But once you get a little higher, in my opinion, it gets a little tinier than I like. Actually, that's not too bad. But I do have some other trumpets that I often will end up using instead of these. Actually, but they're not that bad. Maybe I should circle around and try them again. What am I saying? They're not that bad. No, this is all pretty good. I'm being picky because I can. Okay, so there's brass. And And yeah, so when will I use brass on a more of a regular composition when I'm not doing a demo and I don't have to use only Metropolis Ark instruments? Well, I'm going to use it when I need really powerful brass, a larger brass side than normal. Now, most of the time I'm writing, I'm not doing a whole lot of like epic trailer music. So a library like Berlin Brass that has smaller, more traditional brass ensemble sections, more traditional sized sections, I'm going to use something like that more because traditional orchestrational principles are just going to translate better when the section size is more traditional and it's more kind of appropriately sized relative to my other libraries. So I'll bring these bad boys out if it's something that's more epic, or I really need some additional power and just really needs to be big. But when I want to do that, then these brass are just terrific at that because there's just a lot of power here. Moving on to the next section, the choirs. So no one choir library that I've worked with does everything that I want a choir library to do. This library might be like Performance Samples Oceania library. It's just like amazing for fast attacks and for playability. And it's got a sound that is really unique and I really like, just like the choices of, excuse me, the choices of syllables and that kind of stuff. This choir is very epic. And it's at a very intense dynamic. It just has a very epic sound, and most of the samples in this library are recorded at louder dynamic range. So like from mezzo forte to triple F. That's kind of the dynamic range of this library. So not a lot of soft articulations, not a lot of soft dynamics to play with. Now that's okay if you're not using this library for everything. So let's listen to a little section of this with the choir sustains, soloed. Then we're using some shorts. These are pretty responsive, not super fast. And so what I'm doing here, this is about as fast as I would ever take these. And to be honest, a little faster than I probably should, because the attacks can't quite keep up with this speed. But it works okay if I have some other elements doubling this motion. So here we've got bassoons, we've got our violins, viola, our high strings patch, and our men's choir working at the same time. Oh, I'm using multiple articulations. So I've got like a little bit of a simulated sforzando here, like a harder attack, and then it dips down, and then it comes back up for the the crescendo. So the shorts, I mean, the sound is just really nice. The room sound is great. The ensemble sounds really good. So, I mean, it's just a really nice epic choir. Oh, and the marcatos. Oh man, these are I just remembered these. These are really amazing. Marcato long. When I know that I don't want a really long sustain, I will almost always use these instead of the sustain patch because this has such a defined phrase. The sound is so defined, and the phrase is so clear. Oh, it's just a wonderful sound. Yeah, just nice to play with. Let's see what we've got here towards the end. So again, really take advantage of the different length articulations. Going back and forth between them can give you a really strong performance. So like mix this with the brass. This is just choir and brass. Let's see what we get. And with strings. What a glorious sound. I mean, that's great. Now, there's also, the choir also has these legatos, the men's legato and the women's legato, and these are really nice. The men's I don't use a ton just because, I mean, I guess there's just not that many uses for it in most of the music that I write. I mean, double that with some legato cello and a French horn, and man, you've got a really beautiful sound though. The women's legato. Wow, it goes high, it goes all the way up to C. Yeah, but really great. Well, you put that, like double your melody on an epic track over your biggest moment with like those women's legatos, and man, it just double that with violins. I mean, you got some strength there. Let's just do that. Let's grab these high string legatos in octaves. Now, this is actually not my favorite way to do legato lines because, like I said, I usually like to do more sectional string writing. So I'll use something like cinematic studio strings or soaring strings for most of my string writing. And so I'll just have like first and second violins in octaves and achieve basically the same thing as this patch. And I prefer to do it that way in most circumstances. But actually, that's got a really dramatic, intense sound. Maybe I need to use these legato octaves a little more often. They do have like a really sharp attack. I didn't realize they were that agile. Let's try those with these French horns. A little bit of William Alwyn, Swiss Family Robinson, for those of you who are niche like that. That film had some nice music, actually. Anyway, yeah, so these choirs are really nice. Let's Man, this is just a fun library to play with. I'm wanting to like compose as I go, but I'll keep on going through these sections. Percussion. This is a part of the library I don't use that much in the rest of my music. I mean, I guess it's because I have so many other percussion libraries that are just part of my template more. But there's a drum set, and I'm using it. I'm not really a drummer. I mean, I'm not a drummer, except I use drum samples. So taikos with a drum set. This piano, I think they only recorded it at one dynamic layer, and then I think the varying velocity affects volume. But it's got this it's not a great piano for playing regular piano patches, regular piano pieces, but it's very great as a percussion instrument, which is one of the ways that I like to use piano in an orchestral context. So like these low notes. I mean, really great for like action. Like let's put that with these guys. I want to turn off those. And let's get those stack bones. That's great. This great ingredients. Oh, boy, I keep forgetting. I should use this library more often. There's just so many terrific colors in here. And it's the same with the Metropolis Ark 2 library. I should mention, since I'm talking about Metropolis Ark 2, that library is similar to this one, except it focuses more on the lower dynamic range. So, for example, it's got a terrific choir, which I actually use more often than this one, because it's more of the softer dynamics, and a lot of what I do is for film, and so it doesn't need to be as big or as epic as this choir. And that's just got some of the most gorgeous children's choir, women's choir, just some of the legatos and stuff are just out of this world. That's like the counterpart to this library on the softer dynamic end. So I need to do a video about that one soon, because it's likewise super terrific. Now the guitar and bass, I'm really not an electric guitar and electric bass and band guy. I mean, I just didn't listen to a lot of that music growing up. So There's not a lot that I can say about these samples from a position of critique. I think they're good. I think they're powerful. Got some power chords separated out to the left and to the right, which are nice. This is my piano chops coming out because I used to play piano. But yeah, some of these power chords just got a really nice full sound. I'm using those at the beginning because this piece really starts with a bang, like the Star Wars main theme does. Hopefully it doesn't hurt anyone's hearing, but I'm using that just to accentuate that main hit. It's actually kind of quiet. But then through the right. So I don't use these libraries, these sections a ton in most of my regular writing, but they're pretty big and they're pretty powerful. One other thing I want to talk about regarding this piece is just what's going on in my mixer window, what I'm doing with reverb and EQ wise. I'm actually not doing very much at all. I am doing a little bit. I'll just pull a little bit of EQ on some of the tracks, and I have a little bit of East-West Spaces, Hamburg Cathedral on some of these instruments. Now you can see it's not a lot because most of these sounds are already very roomy. So let's just go ahead and maybe do an A/B comparison. Just see how does it sound with the reverb and EQ, and then how does it sound without it. And I think you'll discover that it's actually pretty close to the out-of-the-box sound, what I have here. So let's just take a listen. This is with reverb and EQ, the reverb and EQ that I have. All right, now back up. Let's turn off the reverb. Got a few EQ adjustments, these instruments. Now let's listen to it dry with no, yeah. So very, very close to the out-of-the-box sound. You can just hear a little bit of the tail when I stop. If I turn reverb back on. Hear that Hamburg Cathedral? I just like that for just a little bit of tail. If I turn it off, here's what it sounds like with no reverb. So see, not as much tail, but still a really big room sound. So that's the out-of-the-box sound that you get. And I just wanted to show you that I'm doing a little bit with reverb and EQ, but it's not actually changing it a ton. So this is a basic overview of the library. There's more that could be said, and there's a lot more that has been said because this library came out, I think, about 4.5 years ago. Anyhow, I hope you guys appreciated this video. If you did, like the video, subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you had any thoughts or if you have any questions about the library or about this composition. I'd love to hear what those are. I'd love to get back to you. But again, thank you so much for joining me for this video, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next one. You have a great day.